Boone Fork Trail is a 5-mile medium-intensity loop trail. Most of the hike is pretty flat, but there are several significant up and downhill sections and a good number of steps. There are also about 8 to 10 creek crossings ranging from small to medium size, but they are all fairly easy to cross. The trail runs along the Boone Fork River and through the Julian Price Campground. There are several cool areas of the river to see on the hike, some of which are also good spots to get into the water, but there are no significant views of the mountains. The trail is pretty heavily trafficked, but it is long enough that it should not feel super crowded. Several cool spots by the river may be pretty crowded though. This is also the primary trail to get to Hebron Falls. There appears to be a few other trails that can lead you to Hebron Falls, but I don't recommend them because they do not seem to be used very much. The starting point for them does not appear to even be marked, and they have little to no room to park. I really don't have a good feeling about them, and some comments I have read on all trails lead me to believe that they are not good. There are a few different ways to access the Boone Fork Trail, including a fairly hidden entrance across from the Price Lake parking lot. But the main way to access the trail is from the Price Park picnic area. The Price Park picnic area is located near mile marker 297 on the Blue Ridge Parkway, about 4 miles west of Blowing Rock, North Carolina. It is pretty easy to spot because you'll be able to see the large front parking lot from the road. There's a lot more parking further back into the park as well. This is a popular spot for hanging out and having picnics, so both parking lots still sometimes fill up. So it is best to arrive pretty early, especially on weekends and holidays. The Price Park picnic area is quite spacious and has many great spots for kids to play in the water. It is also one of the only places in the area with restrooms. There are restrooms in the middle near where the Boone Fork Trail begins, as well as in the back of the park. These restrooms are closed in the off-season, but there should at least be porta potties beside them even then. There are also restrooms at the rest stop on US 221 less than 3 miles east of the Price Park picnic area. I'm not certain if those are open in the off-season or not. This is a good hike for kids. Some kids may tire of the full 5-mile hike, but if you start the trail by going to the right, it is less than 1.5 miles to one of the best spots on the trail to get into the water. So you could just hike to that spot and come back rather than finishing the loop. That spot may be too intense for very small children though. The trail is generally pretty safe, but there is at least one rocky spot where kids could easily fall several feet down to the creek near this bridge. Also, some smaller children could struggle a bit with the creek crossings. This trail should be fine for most dogs. Some smaller dogs may need to be carried up some of the steps, and of course if your dog happens to not like water, the creek crossings could be an issue for them. Dogs that do like water though will have several places to get in. This trail would definitely not be my #1 pick in the area for photographers, but I'm sure you can get some nice photos of the river or Hebron Falls. And at the right time of year there should be a bunch of nice yellow flowers growing through the Julian Price Campground that the trail runs through, as well as right at the beginning of the hike. However, as I mentioned, there are no good views of the mountains along the trail. To begin the trail, you will cross the bridge near the middle restrooms. Shortly after crossing the bridge, the trail will split and you'll have to decide which way you want to go around the loop. This is also one of the spots where I mentioned you can find some nice yellow flowers at the right time of year. There's something I would like to address before continuing with the trail walkthrough. While the direction you go around the loop is not super important, I do believe that starting to the right and going around counterclockwise is the better way to go. So that is how I'll be walking you through the trail. However, I actually filmed the hike in the other direction, and later regretted doing so. So I want to apologize in advance for any clips that may not totally make sense going around counterclockwise. I believe that going to the right is best, particularly for hikers who are concerned about their endurance, because all of the coolest things to see are on the right side of the loop. So that gives you the benefit of being able to hike to the cool spots and back, or if you do decide to do the full 5-mile loop, it makes it to where you see the cooler spots when you have more energy to enjoy them. It also seems that the hike is intended to be done by starting to the right, because the half-mile markers that are along the trail go up when going in that direction. The right side is also where you access Hebron Falls. However, if you are an avid hiker, you may prefer to start to the left, so you save the best for last. It is totally up to you, but for this video I will be starting to the right. The trail to the right starts out in a pretty cool open area. It then enters some trees and runs alongside the peaceful flowing stream. This first section is almost completely flat, and the gravel trail is well maintained and pretty wide. The trail will remain like this even after you pass the first half-mile marker. There should be one of these markers every half-mile along the entire trail. In this first section, you will come across several good spots where you can stop and look at the river. Before reaching the 1-mile marker, you will pass some large rocks and you will need to traverse some awkward rocky spots. I believe I also recall there being one unmarked split in this section of the trail. However, it is not marked because no matter which way you go, the two trails join back together after a very short distance. Shortly after passing the 1-mile marker, you will come to a bridge on your right. You do not need to cross the bridge. The trail that crosses the bridge is part of the Mountain to Sea Trail, which is over 1,100 miles long. This is one of the places where I mentioned the videos will not make sense. The direction I am panning in this clip is actually the way you will be coming from. All you need to know is to continue the trail to the left and do not cross the bridge. This is also the spot I mentioned where you could fall several feet down to the creek, especially since the rock slants towards the drop-off. So you'll want to keep an eye on children here. After continuing for another 1 to 2/10 of a mile, you'll come to what I think is one of the coolest spots. This area slants down to the river like a beach. It is a popular spot to get in the water, especially because of the giant island-like rock that is in the middle of the river here. Many see it as a cool challenge to cross the river to get to it. However, not everyone will be up for that challenge because while it does appear to be pretty shallow, there is a bit of a current. I don't believe the current is strong enough to be dangerous for older kids, but I don't think it would be safe for small children. If you then continue the trail to around the 1.5 mile mark, you'll come to the side trail for Hebron Falls. If you choose to take the Hebron Falls trail, it will take you pretty far downhill to the river over the course of probably only 1/10 of a mile. When you reach the river, you may expect to see the falls in the distance or a trail that continues alongside the river, but you will not. In order to see the falls, you will need to head up the river to the right over many huge rocks that are actually in the river. The water flowing through these rocks does look pretty cool, but climbing the rocks can be a little tricky. I found that staying to the right worked pretty well, but it was still a challenge, especially with my video equipment. You want to keep an eye out for snakes in this area. I saw this one here on this rock, and I believe some other folks spotted another one. They were probably just water snakes, but I'm really not sure. After climbing up the rocks up the river for I would say 1 to 200 feet, you will reach the base of Hebron Falls. There's a good bit of space on the giant rocks here to get right up to it. There's also a trail in the trees to the right that will take you to the top of the falls, but there's really not much to see up there. You will really want to consider whether taking the Hebron Falls trail is worth it to you, especially if you are concerned about your endurance. As you can see, the falls are nice, but they are definitely not going to blow your mind, and in addition to climbing up the rocks, you will have to go up the steep hill on the way back. However, the rocks in the river are really cool, so some may enjoy it just for that part, and as I mentioned, the water flowing through the large rocks is nice also. To get back to the Boone Fork Trail, you will of course need to go back down the rocks and up the hill the way you came. As you continue along the Boone Fork Trail loop, you'll come to a little ladder next to a very large rock face. There's something I found very peaceful about the area at the top of this ladder. I can't quite explain it. Shortly after passing the 2-mile marker, you will reach the most strenuous part of the Boone Fork Trail. This area has several ups and downs with steps, but the hills are not very long. There are also a couple more really cool areas here where you can get down near the river. I would not say these are good spots to get in the water necessarily, but they are really cool places to sit and probably one of the best spots for photos. Honestly, after seeing these 2 river spots, there is really no more standout things to see on the hike. So you could just turn around here and go back if you prefer. You will only be shortening the hike by less than a mile by doing so. You may still enjoy the rest of the hike though, since it is quite peaceful. If you do continue the loop, the trail will start to be flatter and you will still see several cool spots in the creek. Shortly after passing the halfway point of the trail, you will cross a couple small bridges. It is also around this point in the hike that the trail will start to sort of zigzag from one side of the creek to the other, so you'll need to cross it about 8 to 10 times. These creek crossings are pretty easy to traverse, but there are 1 or 2 of them that may require a little bit of a jump, which of course can be a bit scary on rocks that could be slippery. The creek crossings are sometimes accompanied by more mini waterfalls. There are still a few short up and down hills in this area. There are a few more small creek crossings after you pass the 3-mile marker, as well as some big rocks. You will then emerge from the trees in a nice open area right as you are approaching the 3.5-mile marker. Here you can get a tiny glimpse of the mountain peaks in the distance. The lack of shade here can be pretty brutal on a hot sunny day, but fortunately this section is not very long. I estimate that after about 1 to 2/10 of a mile the trail re-enters the trees. You will then come to a split in the trail where you will of course follow the signs to the left to stay on the Boone Fork Trail. Again, keep in mind the direction I am panning in this clip is the direction you will be coming from. Shortly after passing the 4-mile marker, you will enter the Julian Price Campground. From this point on, the trail is almost entirely flat. There are restrooms you will pass here that you should be able to use, but they will likely be closed during the off-season. The trail will then turn to pavement for a short time as you continue through the campground. You'll also pass several picnic tables where you may want to stop and eat a snack before finishing the final leg of the hike. I believe these are the only places to sit along the entire hike, aside from rocks of course. As you continue past the 4.5-mile marker, you will be very close to the parkway. This is also where you may see a lot of nice yellow flowers if it is the right time of year. You also come to another side trail to the right that is not marked. After only about 100 feet, this trail emerges from the trees in the parkway, right across from the main parking lot for Price Lake. This trail is pretty hidden when you are at the Price Lake parking lot. However, to continue the Boone Fork Trail, you will of course need to stay to the left instead of taking the side trail. After continuing for a bit longer, you will emerge from the trees back at the field where you began. I could not resist including this bonus clip where I heard a stranger on the hike hitting some killer notes.
Sorry, I didn't realize you were filming.
There you go. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing for more informative hiking videos.